All right, so let's talk about containers now. In the past, I used the fig pop method. It's still a very popular method where you use a plastic bag. But one issue with cuttings is sometimes people have failures when they've rooted their cutting out and then they have to up pot it. So I've changed strategies this year and I'm now using a container. So this is a direct plant method. A lot of people do this and it makes a lot of sense. So this is a tree pot. Dimensions are 4 by 4 by 9, so fairly deep size. You can see there's drainage holes in the bottom there, which is very important. I got these from Stew & Sons. Greenhouse Megastore also carries these, but I found the price is a bit better at Stew & Sons. Few benefits with this container. Number one, you're not going to have to potentially shock the plant by up-potting it. It's already in a container that it can stay in for quite a while and root out. You can see, this has quite a bit of depth to go before it reaches the bottom. So that's a benefit. You don't have to mess with the plant. You can leave it in here beyond the initial rooting and let it fully root out. The other benefit to this is because it's got some plastic here that's fairly thick, it's more insulating, so you're going to have less of a chance of temperature fluctuations than you would if you're dealing with thin plastic. So this should help keep the temperature more constant on the soil. And it's also pretty narrow, right? So I can get a lot of these down on a heat mat to propagate. It's not taking up a huge amount of space. So that's definitely one change. When it comes to growing media, there are a lot of different choices. And in my opinion, you can be successful with any of them as long as you keep certain things in mind. Buying, a pre-made solution, which is the Pro Mix. A lot of people have success rooting in that. You could also go the route of purchasing peat moss and some perlite and doing a ratio of 1:1 with that. I've certainly used that in the past. What I'm going to actually be doing this year is using coconut coir and perlite for aeration. So why coconut coir? So the first reason is I'm going to be rooting these cuttings indoors, so I want something that's sterile. And coconut coir is sterile, it's inert, inorganic. So there's no chance of mold or fungus being in there. No chance of, larvae from bugs being in there. So when I take that material into my home, I know that it's clean and I'm not bringing anything bad into the house or exposing the cuttings to that. Now you can get around that with the other things I mentioned, like the Pro Mix or the peat moss, by sterilizing it yourself. So, some people will bake that material in their oven, believe it or not, or the more common thing is to boil some water and then pour that over the mixture and really let that heat get circulated throughout that media before exposing their cutting to that. So that's also an option, but I like that the coconut coir is already set up. I don't have to sterilize it. Second benefit in my mind is that the coconut coir is pH neutral. In my mind, the fewer fluctuations in the environment, the better for the cutting. The next thing I like about coconut coir is that it is very absorbent of water. So it really acts like a sponge and soaks that up. So because it holds water so well, you don't really have to water as much. Now you also have to be careful with coconut coir because it does absorb water so much. You don't want to overdo saturation. You really want to follow the manufacturer's recommendations for when you make up your block, and hydrate that. You don't want it sopping wet. You do that, you're going to cause rot issues. Now I will say, because it is a sponge, you do not want to put your cuttings in 100% coconut coir. I've seen people do that and completely wipe out their entire lot of cuttings because they rotted out. So you really want to compensate with something that's going to help drainage. And for me, that product is perlite. All right, we're gonna get started on mixing this stuff up. So this is the block of coconut coir that I bought. Of course, you can use any brand that you want. This is 10 pounds. Just to avoid messing with the pH too much, I'm going to use RO water to hydrate this block. So I've got some warm RO water in here. This is just a gallon bucket. We're going to need more than this. Okay, it's only been about a minute and it's already absorbed all the water. So we're going to need a few gallons of water. I'm just going to flip this guy. And then add another gallon of water. This took 4 gallons of water and about 20 minutes to completely hydrate. I did have some trouble with the very core of that brick. It was very dried out, so I had to really crumble that up by hand. But at the end of the process, you want something that looks like this. Fluffy, light, and not overly wet. So when I squeeze this, it clumps together, but no water is dripping out from it. That is about the moisture level that you want. Now, like I mentioned, I do use perlite, so we're going to drop that into this mix. Again, it doesn't really matter what brand you use. This is what I happen to get, just out of convenience on Amazon. So this is 8 quarts. Go ahead and drop in one more bag. Okay, our media is all ready and we're going to start potting up. Before we do that, I'm going to do a little experiment, and I'm actually going to try 3 different methods because I'm still on the fence as to whether rooting hormone really helps the process out or hinders it, as well as making slices into the bottom of the cutting. Alright, so I've got a Sharpie white paint pen. This is what you'll use to, mark your cutting. Alright, and then we're going to start with 1. So this was the no frills kind of method. So I'm going to fill this pretty much all the way up. And for cutting, I'm going to basically put it down 50% of the way into the soil, whatever that might be for your cutting. That gives it multiple chances to root. And just lightly tap it down. Okay? That's all there is to group 1. So for group 2, I am going to dip the bottom into some Clonex, but I'm not going to put any cuts into it. So we'll see what happens with this. Some people will argue that you need to cut it in order for your rooting hormone to penetrate. And these are all black Madeira, so I don't really need to label that, but I am going to put a number 2 here so we know. Okay, so we can see our node is right at the bottom here, which is great. I'm going to go ahead and just cover that node as well as the bottom with some rooting hormone. Don't want too much excess there, so we don't want to rub the rooting hormone off when we stick it in. So I'm going to just use another cutting to make a depression, little hole in there. And then we'll just stick our cutting in there. And we've got our number 2 ready to go. Okay, so for this, we are going to not cleave off a large amount of bark, because I actually don't think that works. That does introduce rot. I'm going to do what I've seen a couple of other garden channels do, which is to just make a slice into the bark. Basically an insertion point for that rooting hormone to penetrate better and also to allow roots to emerge. So we're not going to affect a huge surface area this way. So we can see the node is right here. So, you know, with a sterile knife, we're going to just go from the sides and make a couple cuts. One at the back here. Just to slice down. That's the only difference. I'm still going to take this cutting, I'm going to stick it into the Clonex. Just tapping the sides here. And then in it goes into the pot. Alright, so let's see what's next. Alright guys, we're now in my home office, and you can see I've got quite a few cuttings that I'm rooting here. So I've got this bin here that has all fig cuttings. I have frankincense in this tray. And then you can see another bin full of fig cuttings. So let's break down some things I have going here. First off, I have a heat mat down there that is covering the bottom of all these bins. So that is one thing I am not changing. I will say that yes, you can successfully root cuttings without a heat source, but you're going to get faster results and better results with a heat source. I have to give credit to Millennial Garden for turning me on to this product. So this is AC Infinity heat mat that's 48 by 20 inches long, which I really like. I've used smaller heat mats in the past, and this provides a lot more surface area. I can get a lot more cuttings on there, so that's a great item. I also went ahead and got one of these thermostat controllers. So pretty simple, you just plug this into your wall, you plug the heat mat into the thermostat, you set your temperature, and then it will turn off the heating once it's reached your set temperature. So as you can see here, it's not heating at the moment because that indicator light is not on, and that's because it has exceeded my set temperature of 78 degrees. How it determines that is there's a little probe here. So you just put this probe into your bin where your cuttings are, and it's going to sense the temperature in there. And most people will tell you that a temperature in the range of 75 to 80 degrees is more or less the sweet spot. So you want to kind of maintain that. So it's really nice is you don't have to worry about your cuttings overheating or getting too cold. And then just to make it more efficient, I don't have the heat mat sitting on my bare wood floor. I've got it sitting on a rubber exercise mat. So my thought is it's not going to fluctuate the temperature as much. It's going to hold the heat a little bit better than if I had this sitting on the bare floor. I'm looking forward to sharing the results with you on this. It should be interesting too to see, you know, if the thickness of the cutting makes a big difference and how hard the wood is, if that causes it to take longer. I suspect a cutting like this that's very thick might take a little bit longer than something like this, but we'll see. And then also just to see the results of our 1, 2, 3 group. So this whole line of cuttings here, those are our 1s, our 2s, and our 3s. Another thing I want to mention is, you know, I probably won't need to water these cuttings for a week. The media should really hold that water in and do well for it. Because I am on city water, and city water leaves a lot to be desired, I don't want to hit these guys with chlorine, chloramine, any of that at this stage. So I am going to just use RO water at this point. When I follow up In a couple months, we'll talk about, fertilization and things like that, but you don't have to worry about that for the first month or so as these guys are rooting. So enjoy those cuttings. Hope you have a successful rooting season, and I will come back to you in about a month to 2 on the results. Thanks for watching, and happy gardening.